So, Hueco Mundo is pretty long. Welcome back to another blind review of Bleach. I had a hard time deciding the best way to tackle this review as Hueco Mundo is split up into 3 arcs, which were smaller than the ones before it, and I didn't want to make 3 small separate reviews. So, I decided to tackle all of it in one video. For reference, I'll be discussing my thoughts and impressions on episodes 138 through 203, or chapters 229 through 315. This arc introduced my new favorite Bleach character. Okay, second favorite behind you, Rukia, as well as some of the best fighting and animation in Bleach so far. However, it also has some issues. But before I start going into specific details, a quick reminder that I've already covered the first 4 arcs of Bleach. So, if you want to check those out, there's a playlist on my channel. Also, if you are enjoying these Bleach reviews, drop them a like, it helps keep me motivated to push these out, and also hit the subscribe button as I will be covering the rest of Bleach as I make my journey through it. With all that said, let's not waste any more time and talk about the Hueco Mundo arc. We left off with Aizen at the end of the arc showing interest in Orihime and her abilities. This arc opens up with Aizen gathering the espadas and activating the Hogyoku. Aizen was able to do this as he states that the Hogyoku, with its seal removed, can briefly unleash its full power when it is joined with someone who possesses twice the spirit energy of an average captain. He then uses the Hogyoku to create a new Arrancar, and then asks ulquiorra if he remembers the order he assigned him and to carry it out. I like seeing on the espada, and I like that we didn't see each one's numbers at this point, which allowed me to theorize which ones were stronger than grimmjow and ulquiorra. Everyone is off training for the battle with Aizen when the Arrancars invade the human world again, and the ones this time around are Grimmjow, Yami, Luffy, and Wonderwheeze. Grimmjow heads out to find Ichigo to have a rematch and prove he's stronger than Ichigo. Ichigo and Grimmjow rematch came a lot sooner than I anticipated, but I'm glad it did, as this time around Ichigo now has control of his hollow mask. Though he only has control for 11 seconds. Ichigo instantly activates his Bankai, which Grimmjow says Zangetsu could not stop him during the last battle. Ichigo reminds him that he is the one who gave him that scar on his chest. Ichigo then has his full hollow mask appear and the fight begins. Ichigo has the upper hand this time around, but before he can take the final swing, his mask breaks. Grimmjow is about to use a Sero to kill Ichigo, but Rukia shows up and is able to stop him. However, she isn't strong enough to fight Grimmjow, but luckily Shinji appears and with his hollow mask fights Grimmjow and dominates the fight. I'm honestly surprised at how strong Shinji seemed to be, and I wonder how he compares to the other espadas ranked 1 through 5 in terms of strength. Grimmjow was about to activate his resurrection, but ulquiorra shows up and tells him their mission is complete. That mission being to capture Orihime. When he shows up, he easily takes down her guards and tells her he will kill her friends if she doesn't come with him, and shows her all the fighting that was occurring. Orihime is a character who has always been kind, and she has no family, only her friends, and so she'll do anything to protect them and gives herself up to ulquiorra. We had other fighting besides Ichigo and Grimmjow going on, with the highlight for me being Urahara versus Yami. He shows off just how smart and experienced he is against Yami, even mocking him during the fight. This is the most fighting we've gotten to see from Urahara, and I wished it was longer. There are a lot of fights in this arc, and I can't speak about all of them, but I will be discussing the important ones coming up. Ulquiorra allows Orihime to say goodbye to one person as long as she doesn't reveal herself to them. I honestly expected her to say goodbye to Tatsuki, as that has been the person closest to her more than anyone since her brother passed away, but she ends up choosing Ichigo. She says that if she could live several different lives, then each one of them she would still fall in love with Ichigo, and oh man, I can only hope that someone would show me even a fraction of this kind of love one day. The next day, Ichigo and the others discuss Orihime being missing, and Ukitake theorizes that she was killed, but Ichigo says he felt her spirit energy last night when she said goodbye. This leads to Yamamoto proclaiming her a traitor and forbids them from going after her. The other Soul Reapers follow his orders and goes back to the Soul Society to prepare for Aizen, but Ichigo ignores his orders and goes to Urahara to find a way to save Orihime. He isn't the only one though, as both Uryu, who got his powers back, and Chad, who has gotten stronger and shows off his new designed arm, go with him to save Orihime. You know, it's interesting thinking back to the first arc why I didn't care much for Orihime. I didn't dislike her, but I also wasn't her biggest fan, but at this point I really care about her and hated seeing her being torn away from her friends. And I think one of the reasons this arc works so well is because of the development and time we've gotten with her, and how invested I was in wanting her to be rescued. In Hueco Mundo, Aizen asks Orihime to show off her powers, and she heals Grimmjow's arm. Aizen says that her powers limit, reject, and deny all phenomena, which means that her power trespasses on God's territory and violates divine law. I honestly could have never expected Orihime of all characters to have such an OP ability, and despite finishing this huge arc, it is never revealed why she has it. Grimmjow also has Orihime heal the scar on his back, but not his chest, and then kills Luffy to take back his rank as the 6th Espada. We see Isshin and Ryukin talking, and it's made clear they've known each other a long time, and I found this so interesting as they should hate each other, and yet here they are, talking like casual friends / rivals, similar to how their sons are to each other. Also, one of you pointed out to me in the comments last video that Isshin refers to hating not being able to save Masaki 20 years ago, and yet she only died a decade ago, which scrambled my brain and makes me wonder even more about Isshin and why he refuses to tell Ichigo he's a Soul Reaper and that he knew Uryu's father. Chad, Uryu, and Ichigo arrive at Hueco Mundo, and Chad and Uryu show off their new strength early on against two strong hollows. The fight itself wasn't important outside of showing how strong they've gotten. We get to see Hueco Mundo in full for the first time, as it's been brief shots before now, and it's a giant, almost lifeless-like desert that never sees daylight, which is pretty fitting for this world. While making our way to the castle, we are introduced to three new characters, Nail, Pesce, and Dondachaka. These three are hilarious right out the gate, bringing new life to this arc, with Nail quickly rising my ranks in my favorite Bleach characters list. Despite not trusting each other at first, they quickly decide to help Ichigo and the others after Ichigo protects Nail. Rukia and Renji also show up and join the team, and I was so happy to see them. As I've stated in all my videos, Rukia and Renji are my favorite characters, and now with Nail here, the team dynamic has never been better. Rukia, as usual, yells at Ichigo for not waiting for them, stating of course they would have come to save their friend. Ichigo in the last arc was pushing others away and trying to do everything on his own, and Rukia has constantly been the voice of reason for Ichigo. They reach Las Noches and find 5 exits, so they make an oath to come back alive before splitting up. Nail follows Ichigo, Pesce ends up with Uryu, and Dondachaka with Renji. Aizen shows Orihime the Hogyoku, and she decides she will be the one to destroy it. She probably is the only one capable of this, but at the same time, I could be wrong. Though, it's always nice seeing a character not just waiting for help, and instead tries to find ways they can help the others, even if she doesn't really follow suit with this. We go up against Privion Espada, who are former Espadas that were demoted. The only fight worth mentioning was Ichigo versus Dordone. I really enjoyed Dordone as a character, as he has so much charm and tries to push Ichigo to use his full strength, which he's been trying to save until later fights. He fires the Sero at Ichigo, and Nail shows off one of her abilities, which is she can swallow it and fire it back at him. It doesn't defeat him though, and so Ichigo is forced to use his Hollow Mask, but only for a second, and slashes Dordone. Nail then uses another ability, which is she can heal using her saliva. Gross! We have other fights going on at the same time, but the one I want to talk about is Rukia's. She is greeted by the 9th Espada, who tells her to follow him inside. The 9th Espada takes off their mask and reveals that he is Kaien Shiva, or so he wants Rukia to think. The truth is, the 9th Espada possesses his face, voice, memories, and even his abilities. They use this to affect her emotions during the fight and gain the upper hand. But Rukia is able to overcome this as she remembers that Kaien told her that a heart is born between a bond, noting that this means that a person's heart is instead left with their friends. Kaien concludes that leaving her heart with her friends is why Rukia must never die alone, and she realizes that Kaien's heart will always be with her, and she defeats the Espada. It was fantastic to see Rukia get a huge win for once, against an Espada no less, but also to finally get that closure she never was able to get with Kaien. Before I continue on, I want to discuss my biggest issue with this arc, and that was the pacing. Now maybe it's because I was watching double the amount I normally do for these videos, but the pacing in this arc is pretty slow. The pace hasn't felt this slow since the first arc, and even then I think the pacing here was even slower. I'm not sure if anyone else felt this way while watching, but around this point and onwards in the arc, I felt like at times it dragged a little bit. Another complaint I have is while I did really like Pesce and Dondachaka as characters, around this point and more so in the next several episodes, Pesce more so, started to kind of annoy me. Mostly it has to do with him repeating the same joke this far along, and it just got a bit grating for me. I still enjoy them both as characters, and I'm glad they're here, but I do wish we switch up some of the jokes, or spend less time making them. But this also could have to do with the fact that the pacing was so slow, and so much of the episodes were just Pesce saying the same joke over and over and over again for 5 minutes of the episode, which really got on my nerves, as I wanted to just move on. This is probably an anime only thing, and in the manga they don't keep repeating it a billion times, or maybe that's just how they are. Anyways, I'll save my final complaint, which is related to a pacing issue, for later during a specific fight when we get there, but for now, back to the story and some positives. Orihime is being beat up by these two women Arrancars when grimmjow shows up and grabs Orihime and takes her with him. Ichigo runs into Orikora, but doesn't want to fight him until Orikora informs him that he was the one who brought Orihime to Las Noches. Ichigo responds with his sword. He doesn't hold back and uses his Hollow Mask, Bankai, and a Getsuga Tensho. However, this doesn't hurt Orikora, and he asks him if that's all he has. Orikora proceeds to beat Ichigo down worse than we've ever seen before. Ichigo is on the verge of death. Wait, didn't I just say we'd be positive? This sucks! But grimmjow and Orihime arrives, and grimmjow tells Orihime to heal him. His reasoning for this is that he wants to fight Ichigo at full strength and prove that he's stronger. A selfish request, but one I'm thankful for, as now Orihime is reunited with Ichigo. Orikora returns to the scene and questions grimmjow on why he did this. Grimmjow is weaker than Orikora, but is able to steal him away just long enough so him and Ichigo can have their final match. I wish the fight between Orikora and Grimmjow could have lasted a bit longer. As I stated in the last video, I was really looking forward to that. But that fight would just end with Grimmjow losing, as with power scaling goes, Orikora is naturally stronger than Grimmjow. Ichigo tells Orihime and Nail not to worry and that he'll win, and Nail freaks out. But Orihime tells her that when Ichigo says he'll do something, he does it. That is who he is. Ichigo and Grimmjow have an outstanding fight. In every arc, I like to mention which fight was my favorite, and for me, I think it's this one. There's another fight later on that you can make the argument is a better fight, but for me, it was this one. The choreography and animation were the best we've seen in Bleach so far, and at first it threw me off, but I really do love Grimmjow's resurrection form. Orihime seeing Ichigo with his hollow mask frightens her, and instead of rooting for him, she instead questions if that is really Ichigo, as his eyes remind her of her brother. Which I thought her memory was erased, so I don't really know how she remembers that, but maybe I'm just overthinking it or missing something and forgotten something. I don't know, you guys can always let me know. Nail, being the best, tells Orihime that he came to save her and that the power he's using is to protect his friends and that each time he uses it he is suffering, but he's doing it for them. Orihime realizes she's right and cheers Ichigo on, which gives him the boost he needed, and the way he stops Grimmjow without looking before slashing him made me get out of my chair from how excited this made me. I wish I had recorded my reaction to this and to other moments in this arc, because I just constantly jumped out of my chair. If it's been a while since you've seen this fight, I highly recommend a rewatch of it. It was just great stuff. With the fight over, Nail tackles Ichigo and talks about how happy she was he didn't die. This leads to my favorite scene in all of Bleach.
As heavy as you look. What the hell?
That is not how you speak to a lady. There are rules you gotta stick to when talking about certain topics. No matter what she weighs, you always tell her she's light as air, even if she's a hippo!
Which absolutely cracks me up. And I rewatched this probably at least 15 times now. It's so good. I love Nail so much. Though the good times didn't last long, as nnoitra shows up and attacks Ichigo. nnoitra is the 5th Espada, and him being stronger than Grimmjow, who Ichigo barely defeated, had me worried about how this fight would go. nnoitra recognizes Nail and informs us she used to be an Espada and that he is the one responsible for splitting open her mask. I was so shocked to learn that she was an Espada, and even more surprised when she transformed back into her full form. It is revealed she was the former Espada number 3, which again made me scream, "What?" We learn her backstory with Pesce and Donachaka and see how Nail had never really liked fighting, the opposite of so many Espadas and other characters we have met so far. nnoitra always challenged her, and with help from the guy with pink hair. Look, I try saying his name, but I just can't do it, I'm sorry. With his help, he is able to defeat Nail by striking her from the back, and that gives her amnesia and turns her into child form. Pesce and Donachaka vow to protect her, and I know I stated some annoyance towards them, but this scene was really sweet and made me earn more respect for them as characters. Nail constantly has the upper hand on nnoitra and even uses her resurrection form, which is a centaur, and it is an amazing design, and for some reason I couldn't put that together when I looked at her mask that this would be her form, but I'm a little slow. But before she can defeat him, she reverts back to her child form. Before I mention what comes next, I want to jump back and talk about the other fight going on, which was Renji, Uryu, Donachaka, and Pesce versus the pink-haired guy. This fight really dragged for me, as every time it seemed like we beat him, he would just heal himself and keep going. At first, I really liked him having this ability, as it suits him since other hollows have healed themselves before, and he is a scientist, so it makes sense. But I did feel like he used it one too many times for my liking. And this fight lasted way longer than all the other fights, and so I really started to dislike it. Though I want to say I do love his design and his ultimate ability, I just wish the fight was paced better. Again, I feel like this fight is probably not this irritating and this long in the manga, but for anime's sake they wanted to fill out the time, so they took this much time. I'm not saying he doesn't heal himself constantly, as I'm sure he absolutely does. That's not my point, even though I do wish that didn't happen. I mean, he heals himself like 3 times. I'm just saying that it's probably not as annoying as in the anime. They're just standing around and he just is constantly saying the same thing over and over again about how he's much better than them and he studied their moves, and so it got a bit irritating for me, as I wish like we could go on. Also, you know, that we had other fights going on as well. There's a whole lot of fighting in this arc, so I don't know. This one just really annoyed me and got on my nerves, and it was decent, but I probably won't see myself rewatching this fight compared to the other ones. Though they're not the ones who beat him anyways, as instead what happens is Mayuri arrives to fight him. Kenpachi, Byakuya, and the 4th squad captain all arrive here in Hueco Mundo as well. Byakuya fights the 7th Espada, and it's a pretty solid fight, and I do like the 7th Espada's design, as he has a million eyes, but at the same time, this fight wasn't too crazy compared to the others, but I still really enjoyed this fight much more than the fight I just talked about. But I will say I do love always seeing Byakuya use his abilities and using so many different Keto moves, I can't memorize them all, but I do love that there is so much complexity to the power system in this, that there is like at least 99, maybe 100 keto moves, and we have barely seen any of them. I don't know how Kubo was able to come up with this great system and come up with all these different ones, but I do love it, and I love the fact that it's not just a big sword, bigger sword thing that I initially thought when I first started Bleach. Also, Byakuya refers to Rukia as his one pride, and I absolutely love seeing this development of him, and that he is now truly being a big brother to Rukia. The other fight I want to focus on is Miyuri versus Zalaraparo. There, I tried. If I said it right, great. If not, pink-haired guy. I'm sorry. And Kenpachi versus nnoitra. While I still don't like Miyuri for what he did to the Quincy's and Uryu's grandfather, I found his fighting style pretty unique and enjoyed this fight as both were scientists using their wit to gain the upper hand. Also, we have more comedy here, which I really did enjoy around here, as it was new jokes than before. Also, the move he uses to kill pink-haired guy is one of the most brutal deaths I've ever seen. Not brutal in the fact that it's like really gory or anything, but just brutal as in like, imagine sitting here, or I guess standing there, and experiencing 1,000 years go by and you cannot move. I cannot imagine the mental torture that is. And I would never wish that on even my worst enemy. Well, Kenpachi versus nnoitra was so much fun, as they are very similar and they both love fighting. Both had their hidden power revolving around their eye patch. I absolutely loved it. This fight got me so hyped constantly with the music. Kenpachi always steals the show, and I honestly thought he would unlock his Bankai here as he's fighting one of the top 5 Espadas. But he doesn't, and yet he still wins. The man is a powerhouse, and if anyone can defeat the #1 Espada, it would be him. I have to say, I do find it a bit weird that back in the Soul Society arc, Ichigo was able to defeat him without a Bankai, and yet here, Kenpachi's defeating Espadas. I don't really know how that works on the power scale, but it doesn't matter. Power scaling can be very complicated, and if I sit here and think about that, it's just probably going to ruin stuff for me, so let's just move on past that. nnoitra showed off his Resurrection form as well, and his was the most devil-like one of all, and I absolutely loved it. It's also very cheap as he just keeps growing back his arms. Not cool, man. Not cool. Though the fighting is over, another Espada appears and recaptures Orihime. Can we please give her a break? Please! Aizen then informs them all that they are now trapped in Hueco Mundo, and with half of Soul Society's captains trapped here, now is the best time to destroy Karakura Town and create the key. However, what looks like Karakura Town is actually a fake made by Urahara, and all the captains are there waiting for Aizen. I'm really impressed with how fast Urahara was able to create this, and this is so genius. I honestly expected that when we got here, as I looked up the name of arcs beforehand and saw fake Karakura Town, I didn't really know what that meant at the time, which to be fair, half the time I forget that's what the town is called, which is my bad, my poor memory. Aizen calls his top 3 Espada to the fight, and with that, this arc comes to a close. This arc was overall great, but the pacing issues really started to affect my experience with it. I hate being negative towards something, especially when it's something that I've come to love and always look forward to watching, but I had to be honest about how I felt during this section of the story. I could lie or simply not mention it and tell you all what I'm sure you want to hear, but that wouldn't be fair to you or myself. This is a review, and while I may not be an expert when it comes to critiquing a show, I still want to give my honest feedback. Overall, I still enjoyed this arc. As I stated before, it has some of the best fights in animation yet, and introduced one of my favorite characters in all of anime with Nell. This arc was probably the funniest arc of them all as well. This arc made me laugh more times than any other arc in this story has so far, and while this arc may not be my personal favorite arc, as we stated in the last one, the Arrival one was, I still think the good outweigh the bad by a large margin. This arc was mostly fighting, which is great and all, but I'm someone who really enjoys when we're just slowing down and we're just spending time with the characters and talking. That's just a personal preference. If you love fights, this arc will probably be your favorite, though the pacing, again, can be a bit rough, unfortunately, but that's what happens when you have 40 episodes of fighting, I suppose, as well as, you know, that's just how anime was back then. They had to fill in the time. It also didn't help with the fact that the first 5 minutes was both the intro and recap of each episode, which is the first time this has happened. We started to get that a little bit in the Arrival arc. I know it's not a big deal as you can just skip it nowadays, but I'm just saying that watching this back in the day, I understand why so many people probably couldn't stand this. Figuring out how to structure this video was hard, as I was combining arcs which I hadn't done before, and this arc was full of fights, which are usually what I discuss in detail the least, so I hope this video wasn't a complete mess, as it looks like the next arc will also be a bunch of fighting. I look forward to seeing the captains versus the rest of the Espada, and hopefully getting to see Aizen finally fighting. No matter my criticisms for this arc, if there's one thing I can count on is that Bleach will always have me excited for what's to come next. Judging by the way the episodes go, it looks like we will have a short arc before the very long battle of Fate Karakura Town. So I'm not sure the best way to tackle that, but I guess I'll figure it out as I watch the arc. If you did enjoy this video, drop it a like. As always, it really does help me out. Also, again, if you haven't checked them out, you can go check out the first 4 reviews I already did. There's a playlist on my channel, or there will probably be a link in the description or a card somewhere around the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, as I will still be covering the rest of Bleach, and even after I've finished and caught up with Bleach, I will be covering other stuff as well. So you have a lot to look forward to. That's all I have for you now, so I will see you all in my next review. Peace.